Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to make knife handles from Carvex, which is a three-dimensional micarta type product. Now for this particular project, we're working on a patriotic themed knife, and I decided it was worth trying out the Carvex. They have some beautiful flag scales available. They have a variety of different products, but the flags came in either the waving flag or the straight. Now this particular project started out with me taking a standard knife blank, one of the knife blanks that I sell, and I beveled it and I did some blade etching. I just etched some stars onto the blade. Now I've covered blade etching numerous videos. I'll put a link on this one. I'm not going to cover it in detail in this particular video, but it's a very simple process with salt water and a 12-volt car battery charger. So once I had finished the blade, I took a look at the different products that were available made out of Carvex. I decided on the waving flag for this particular knife. Now I've never used this stuff before. It's a little bit of a learning curve. Now I started out, this is the Micarta blanks that I got, or the Carvex blanks that I got. I started out by wanting to put some liners. I'm going to use a combination of black and blue liners. And all I'm going to do is laminate these on with fiberglass resin. So I'm basically making micarta liners that will get laminated to the Carvex scales. What I've done is I've set up a piece of glass over to my left-hand side and a piece of parchment paper so the fiberglass resin doesn't stick to it. And I'm just laying out 4 sheets of black construction paper and 3 sheets of the blue, and then I'm going to just put some fiberglass resin right onto the Carvex, the back of the Carvex. I've already prepped this. I've degreased it with an alcohol wipe and let it dry, and then I'm just going to place this right on top of that resined paper. And then I'm not going to use a press or micarta press or anything like that for this project. All I'm going to do is weight it down with a brick, or in this case it's a paver. Take one more look. It's a very simple process. I'm just completely saturating each piece of paper with fiberglass resin, and then the back of the Carvex, which has been degreased, I paint it with fiberglass resin and then lay it right up on top of the other paper and weigh it down, with something, with a brick, with a paper, anything like that. Once that dries, I've taken both of those scales, clamped them together, and I'm just going over to the belt sander and I'm going to shape the very front of the handles. And I clamp them together because really I want them both to be the same. Once that's done, I'm going to use the Northgard method of applying scales, and it's a very simple method. I'm going to glue one side of the scales into position, and I've just epoxied both the scales as well as the blade, and I'm going to position that exactly where I want it and then clamp it in place. And then I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now before I set it aside, I'm going to clean off that little bit of epoxy that always squeezes out right on top of the handles. I use a paper towel first with a plastic knife, and then the trick is to use an alcohol wipe. That really cleans up any residual epoxy from the blade. And the knife really helps to get right into that corner between the scales and the blade. Now once that's dry, I'm going to go over to the drill press. I'm going to line up that drill bit perfectly through the hole on the knife. Then I'm going to use a clamp, and I'm going to clamp that into position. Now note that I've got a board That's so that you don't blow out the front side of the Carvex when you're drilling a hole through it. It just adds a little bit of additional support. Once the blade is firmly clamped in place, then I can turn on the drill press and drill right through the blade and then through the Carvex. So this hole is going to be perfectly aligned with the pre-existing hole in the blade. Now just move the board down. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the back hole. For this particular project, I'm using 1/4-inch pins. I went slightly oversized with the drill bit. I used a size F drill bit. And again, once it's all clamped into position, I'm going to drill through that back hole. And you'll see in a minute. But basically, I'm going to duplicate this process for the other side of the scales. Now, before I glue the other half of the scales onto the blade, I'm going to kind of trim this one to size. I'm just going to bring it over to a pin saw, and I'm going to cut away all of the Carvex, or as much of the Carvex as possible. I'm really just going to follow the outline of the handle on the blade. And it cuts pretty easily. I would say just slightly harder than wood is to cut. Now I've glued the other handle on. So I've got a handle with holes drilled through the blade on one side, and I've got a handle with no holes through. I'm going to trim that to size now also. Again, just right back on the pin saw. The more you cut away, kind of the better, the less grinding later. But you don't have to be super accurate at this point. And now I'm going to go back over to the drill press. I'm going to clamp that knife back down to the wood. I'm going to first locate the position by putting the drill right through the top piece of Carvex and the blade, and then I'm going to clamp it into position. That other side of the Carvex is still flat, so this is all being clamped onto a flat surface. And then the holes that I'm drilling here, and this is really the beauty of the Northgard system, is that drill bit is going through both sides. So you're going to have a nice clean hole through both sides, both scales, as well as the blade. Now after the scales are attached and I've got the holes and I actually glued the pins in, the 1/4-inch pins in, I used a disc grinder with a flap sanding wheel. I think I have a 60 grit wheel in here, and I'm going to use that to form those scales to the basic outline or shape of the handle. I'm also going to use that same disc grinder to trim down the pins as well as to really shape the handles. Now the only downside that I found in working with this Carvex is my pins were a little bit on the long side. So when I ground them down, it generated quite a little bit of heat. And I noticed that there was some damage done to the Carvex from that heat. It's a pretty easy fix. So basically in the future, I will cut my pins more accurately to the width of the what's actually needed, so that I don't have to generate that much heat when grinding them down. Anyway, I'm going to continue to use that disc grinder to actually shape these scales, to smooth out all of those rough edges. And this is the neat part of the Carvex, is even though you're going to carve into it and really smooth out these handles, the image is not going to end up being distorted. You're still going to be able to see all of the stars and flag, stars and stripes of that waving flag. Now once I get the scales to where I'm comfortable with them and they fit comfortably in my hand, I am going to sand. I sanded with an 80 grit first, then I went to a 220. I also did some hand sanding with a 600 grit, and then I tried to polish these scales. I was a little bit disappointed. They did not polish very well at all. I didn't end up with that high luster that I was kind of really looking for. I went back onto the manufacturer's site and found out that they don't really polish these scales. They really recommend that you just sand them down to about a 600 grit. And then they're recommending that you either spray polyurethane or spray lacquer as a final coat to bring out that luster. So this is just finishing off with the 600 grit. I decided to use lacquer, a little bit of a more durable finish. It's a high gloss lacquer, and it also dries really quickly. Couple of coats of that really brought out the shine, and the end result I was very, very happy with. Now I let that dry for a little bit, and these are a couple pictures of the finished product. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. By all means, check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Check out our other how-to knife making videos. Thank you very much for watching.